Oh, there it goes.
Okay, we are live. So I wanted to thank everybody who is tuning in to see this today. I'm very excited to be able to introduce the fine, wonderful female guitarists. We've got Jennifer Batten, Gretchen Menn, Yvette Young, Nili Brosh, Alexandra Zerner, Nikki Stringfield. So my name's Chad, and I am a huge endorser of Line 6 products and Mission Engineering. We've got a Mission pedal here, and I've got just about every Line 6 piece of gear, and it's just phenomenal. But enough with me. We're here about the female guitarists. Let's start with Jennifer. Introduce yourself and talk about your brands, and just tell us about yourself.
Well, I've been playing for about 100 years. Most known for playing with Jeff Beck and Michael Jackson, and I change the order depending on the crowd. If I see a whole lot of gloves in the audience, Michael gets the first call. And my brands are Washburn Guitars. I'm using a Washburn Parallax. It's one of their newer models. And I'm using Thomas Blug, the genius German engineer, the Amp 1. It's at less than 3 pounds. It'll fit in your purse. It's 100-watt, essentially vintage Marshall with 4 channels. And his cabs as well. Oh, man, I need a list in front of me. I got Lockett straps. Let's see. What kind of underwear do I use? Those are the big ones. And Digitech Effects is where I'm at. So on to someone else.
Okay, so let's go with Gretchen and Yvette.
Okay. So I'm Gretchen Menn, and I do solo music, and also I play with Zepparella, which is like a Led Zeppelin tribute band. And I work with Ernie Ball Music Man for guitars, as well as Steven Strom for acoustic guitars, Santa Cruz Guitar Company, 2 Rock amps, Engel amps, DiMarzio pickups and cables and straps, and Providence and Dunlop pedals.
And how long have you been playing?
Like 70 or 80 years. No, I don't. I started on classical guitar. And then I've been in rock bands for maybe like, I got more into rock music maybe 15 years ago.
Nice. Okay, Yvette.
Hi, my name is Yvette. Guitar is the newest instrument I play. I started out playing piano and violin, like basically in the classical world, and then I got into guitar probably like 7 years ago. And then I play in a band called Covet, and I also have my solo project. And the brands I use are, I'm endorsed with Washburn Guitars and Ibanez Guitars. I really like, but I play 7-string and 6-string. And then for acoustic guitars, I play Cork guitars and also Ibanez guitars as well. And I use a lot of Dunlop and Earthquaker pedals.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so let's go to Nili.
Hey, I'm Nili. So I've been seriously practicing since high school. I've been playing for longer than that. So maybe, I don't know, 15 years of serious guitar playing. I have solo stuff out, and I also play guitar in Cirque du Soleil's Michael Jackson 1 show in Vegas. And I use Ibanez guitars, EMG pickups, Dean Markley strings, Dunlop products, Headrush effects, exotic effects. Hope I didn't forget anybody. I think that's pretty much it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I've watched a lot of your stuff. It's really good.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so then let's go to Alexandra Zerner.
Hello, I'm Alexandra Zerner, and I'm a guitar player for all my life, pretty much. I started like 30 years ago, which seems quite a long. I started with classical guitar and then moved to electric, and then started playing piano, bass, and pretty much every instrument that I could get. And I work with TMG pickups, Univox guitars, and pretty much this is my story. And yes, I do solo music, progressive rock, and this kind of stuff.
Well, thank you for being here, and I know that you're up very, very late, and I appreciate it very much. And let's finish off with Nikki Stringfield.
Hello, everybody. I'm Nikki Stringfield. I play guitar for the Iron Maidens and Femme Fatale, and I do solo music as well. I've been playing for about 14 years, which is about half my life now. Just pretty much, I've always played rock and metal. And I play Schecter guitars. I've been playing them since I started, and I now have a signature model. I use Seymour Duncan pickups, GHS strings, get 'em guitar straps, and I just started playing a Kemper amp. And I can bring that, like, just carry it on the plane and take it everywhere with me. So it's pretty in love with that right now.
Shameless plug here. You should try the Helix sometime.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I can arrange that. So
okay. I'm down.
So okay. All right. Well, thank you all for being here, and I really appreciate this. So let's go ahead and get to some of the topics. You're all wonderfully accomplished female guitarists, but you all didn't start that way, and I'm sure you faced struggles along the way. Let's go ahead and talk about some of those struggles, because what we want to do is we want to help ones who are younger, maybe understand what it takes to do what you guys do. So who would like to talk about the struggles of your career?
No.
I can start, I guess.
Go.
So I mentioned earlier that I started out playing music in the classical world, and it was pretty cutthroat and competitive because I used to be forced to do like competitions, and I used to fly around for like auditions and stuff. And I started when I was really young. I started piano when I was 4, and I started violin when I was 7, and I started like playing in orchestras when I was in middle school. So when I was really young, I was kind of just thrust into like a really high pressure, cutthroat, competitive classical world, and it kind of made me disillusioned with music for a while. So in a nutshell, I got kind of sick from all the pressure, and I had to take a break from it. And like for the longest time, I just hated all things music. I just didn't want to even pursue it because I felt like I did it for other people. But I guess I picked up guitar just as a way to meditate and kind of use this therapy for myself, and it kind of changed everything for me, and I fell back in love with music. And ever since then, I've been like super thrilled in it, super stoked in it, because I feel like I picked up an instrument on my terms, and I'm not using it to compete or like using it to like battle other people. It's just something I do for fun. And yeah, that perspective shift really transformed how I deal with music and how I view my career. And I feel like I'm so grateful that I picked up guitar, because if I had stuck in that competitive classical mindset, I would definitely not be in this position right now. So a lot of people who maybe feel like frustrated because they're like comparing themselves to others, or maybe they feel unfulfilled with their instrument, I feel like maybe if they step away and take a lot of that pressure off, like their relationship with music can grow a lot.
I love that story.
Thank you.
It's like the whole competitive thing, it can change you as a player. If you're comparing yourself to other people, you're not getting to the source of who you are.
Yeah.
And that's, I think everybody has fallen into that trap from time to time. And you might think that you're even, and you finally discovered yourself and you feel good about your voice. And all of a sudden you're on a festival with somebody else that you're just, oh my God, I'll never be that good. And it just, all of a sudden you're 1 inch tall again. So it's that's something that we're stupid. Humans are goddamn stupid. You have to keep reminding yourself that you are an individual, and the whole reason you're an artist is to express yourself, not trying to be something else. And that's a tough lesson.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool that this is like how we got kicked off with this, because like I think it's a courageous thing to say, Yvette, in general, because I think it's something that like I think all artists go through this, and if you don't bring it up, I think you're just lying to everybody. But most people don't want to talk about it, you know. So it's one of those things where, like, I think if everybody just came out and said it, that already would like cultivate a little bit of a different community than what we might have now. And so, like, the more voices that we can have to come out and say it, because I'll admit it about myself, like, I've been in that place millions of times, and I'm sure I will be again. But, like, I think people are keeping it to themselves when they say maybe they haven't been there. But I think if we all, like, kind of came out and said it, it might kind of change everybody's perception of what this community is when they first go into it, and might maybe avoid that whole thing, So good for you for, like, speaking up and making that the first thing today.
Yeah. I just figure we're all different people after the same thing, so we could, like, help each other instead of just give each other, like, competition.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually one of the things that's pretty hilarious, is how many people don't realize how many of us are actually, like, legitimately friends, or at least on really friendly terms, when they start trying to pit us against each other. I'm like, that's like one of my really dear friends, or I'm a huge fan of hers too. Like, you're not offending me.
Yeah, it's funny. On the internet all the time, I see it.
Yeah.
So, like, all of these, like, how they try and rank all of the girls, like, against each other, like, this girl's better than this girl, and then they put all the looks into it. It's just like you said, there's so many of us that are friends. It's just, it's so much better to be supportive of each other than, trying to make a big competition of it, because everybody's different. Everybody's got their own styles. So
yeah, and what are people advocating for? Like, we want fewer options. Like, really?
I remember one time I got frustrated online. I was like, can we just stop talking about each other like Pokemon? Like, I feel like they hit us against each other all the time. It's like, we're just friends. Like, even if we're not trying to do it, other people do it for us. So
yeah.
And when people rate it like that, they don't realize that, like Gretchen said, it's like you might be talking about someone who's very close to the person that you think you're giving a compliment to, and you might actually offend them in that way, because they're like, well, I don't want you to talk that way about my friend or anybody in the industry, So it's just not helpful for anyone, even if you think you're giving a compliment. I mean, I think any kind of compliment where you're actually putting someone else down, this is not going to be very productive no matter what. So why even go there,
Yeah.
That's why we love the delete button and the block button.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Use it freely.
I've probably blocked 100 people on Facebook. It's like, you only get one time to piss me off, and bye-bye.
Yes.
Man, just when you think, like,
so good,
people are exempt, like, I guess if you're having to do it, Jennifer, I guess it's just I guess everybody gets it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, man.
I remember, in fact, years ago when this whole thing first started, it was probably even before Facebook. I remember I was touring with Jeff Beck, and we were backstage, and Adrian Belew was down in Nashville, and his wife was saying that she was trying to get him to not look at the posts, because at that time it was a King Crimson thing, like the old Crimson was better than the new Crimson, and it would hurt his feelings. In my mind, the blue Crimson doesn't get better than that, so it's all perspective, and it can really throw you off balance if you take it on board. So if you believe the great reviews, you got to believe the shit reviews too. So leave it all alone and do your thing.
Well said.
Well, I couldn't say anything better. I think you guys are spot on. And in fact, one of my, I've been on YouTube since 2008, and sometimes I've let, personal comments really affect me, and what I learned about 3 years ago was to not feed the trolls, and not give them headspace. It's really important, because it can affect you, and you can't unread what you read, but you can choose not to focus on it. So now we've got a little picture of how you view each other as players in a community. How do you gauge your success? What things do you personally look at as a success to you? Go through it, talk about it.
that might be the most difficult question to answer, especially these days, you know? Because, I mean, I think, first of all, it starts with each individual person's idea of what success is, which I think is different for different people. And then you bring the internet into it, which, you know, going by what you had just said, it's just like, do you go down that rabbit hole or not, you know? So, you know, easier said than done for me personally, not to engage in what the online stuff means, but I've tried very hard in the last few years, definitely, to like keep it to the musical things, you know, to the personal goals of things that I wanted to accomplish before the internet was even a factor in it, you know, whether it's, you know, I don't know, mastering a set of changes or anything musical that really has to do with what I do, and just trying to keep the focus on that, because, you know, I think that's where the pure work comes from and hopefully translates to the other forms of success. But easier said than done, you know, at least for me. So
that's very true. The only thing that is lasting is your personal musical advancements, because money is fleeting, it comes and goes. Fame is fleeting, as David Lee Roth said, here today, gone later today. You know, but when you learn that riff, when you write that song, nobody can take that away from you. It's always part of you.
Yeah, for me, it feels really empowering to create and write, and like everything people say online, even the good stuff and the bad stuff, of course, like that stuff doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because I make art for me and for nobody else. So for me, I guess I feel successful when I grow and when I do something that I didn't expect I could do previously. I think that's like the most empowering and amazing feeling. It's funny, I always joke with my bandmates about how one day, like, what if the internet is just deleted and like nothing. But yeah, I mean, it's true. One day overnight, all of the numbers could disappear, and then, you know, all you have is your skill set and like what you're able to create in your mind. So those are very powerful things.
You got that right. The internet might disappear sooner than later.
That wouldn't be the worst thing that ever happened to humans.
Yeah. You all have my number. It's cool. We'll stay in touch.
So a few comments, and we've got some positive stuff coming. Let me go through and catch up a little bit. I'll go a little back to the beginning if I can find my mouse. All right, there we go. Okay. Right. Beautiful women and very talented women, I might add. So that's nice. Hi, Gretchen. Let's see. All of these women are amazing. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers from Vancouver, BC. That's from Antonio Gonzalez. Let's see. Scrolling through. We have some upper echelon from line 6 in here talking about how talented you guys are, and he is enjoying it. So very nice. Here's one I thought would be really important to read. Her name is CSIP Nicole. It says, "All you girls are such an inspiration to me, an 11-year-old female guitarist, and many others. Thank you so much for being such an inspiration." So this is exactly why I had the idea to do this. So I actually feel good that the thought process that I had when I started this idea is there. So I thank you for that. So,
what was her name?
Her name was CSIP Nicole.
Okay, CSIP Nicole. Well,
yeah.
Keep playing.
SESIP NICOLE.
All right. Yeah. Cool.
Now that is the beauty of the internet on the positive side, because I tell you, when I was, gosh, I joined Michael Jackson in 1987. At that time, Prince had Wendy and Lisa, and I thought, okay, the revolution has begun. Women are going to start popping right and left. Then 30 years went by and nothing, you know. And probably in the last, I don't know, 5 years, and I think a lot of it has to do because of the internet, because young girls can see other girls playing. You don't have to have $1 million record deal to make it into somebody's living room anymore. There's not a month that goes by I don't see some 7-year-old in Indonesia that can kick butt. You know?
Yeah.
Interrupt, but I do have to interrupt for a very important announcement from the COO, Chief Operating Officer of Line 6. This wasn't planned. He's enjoying this conversation. He said, a helix for everyone.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh.
You get a Line 6 helix. And hang on.
That feels heavy.
I know.
It's heavy because I also make these cases, and I
oh wow!
I skin these. Hold on, let me move this out of the way. Hold on. Camera move. Okay, so I make these. Well, this is the clear one, but I actually make them in black because they're sun shields.
That is a nice case.
I want that case.
Yeah, me too. That is awesome.
I want what goes in the case.
But this is what Line 6 is giving you, a helix.
Oh, fantastic!
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you.
I'm gonna up it one, and I'm gonna give you guys your own skin.
Oh my god!
Really?
Wow, we didn't even do anything.
I know. That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
But regardless, this is actually why I support 100% Line 6. So there you have it. Wow,
Wow.
That's awesome.
Damn, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
okay.
It's spring Christmas.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you ladies, when we're done, later, send me your addresses, and I'll send it to Joe, and he'll get you taken care of.
All right.
Fantastic.
Wow.
And then, yeah. So, I guess you do get to try one.
I know. Best birthday ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Wow. I'm kind of speechless at this point. So. Let's get back to the topic at hand. I'm kind of blown away. Well,
He's got the vapors. Leave it to the man to get the hot flash, right?
yeah. Well, I got the polar bear suit on, so. Okay, so, all right. Let's talk about failures, because we all do it. Every one of us, we blow the run, we whatever, or we totally bork something. But how do you guys deal with fails when you fail? What do you tell yourself? Just talk about your failures.
I got the best one ever. I used to start my sets with giant steps, which was a worked out tapping thing. I kicked my own ass, but I did it, and I would start. That's how I'd start my set, and then move on to other things. And there was one stage I was on that was pitch black, and there was a photographer constantly shooting flashes. And it was so distracting. Eventually, I just lost it. I just could not play. And so to cover it up, I just acted like there was something wrong with my amp.
Nice.
And I tell you, I got that from David Williams from the Michael Jackson tour. Because when he played a wrong note, he'd always look at his amp like his amp did it, not him.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
you might need that at some point.
What am I gonna do with no amp on stage? How am I gonna cover that up?
You look at
pyro.
More pyro, right? The pyro messed
There
up.
you
Yeah,
go.
sure.
No, then you mess with your cable with your guitar and start making some racket, pull it out, so it's just meh, meh.
I love it.
Genius.
Next failure.
Yeah.
Keep going. Let's talk about some more failures. It makes me feel good.
I mess up all the time, and it seems like invariably it makes it like somewhere very public, and it's really a bummer, especially because, you know, there's at least for me, I've learned that I want to have a different mindset when I'm practicing versus when I'm performing. Like, I want to leave behind that intensity that I try to bring to practice, and then just be in the moment when I'm performing, try to tap into what I love about music, try to be joyful, try not to put my insecurity on the people who have showed up to have a good time. But man, like, especially when I screw up something really easy, you know, when you're like, oh, I got this, and then you do something really stupid. Maybe you guys don't know, but I do. And it's really hard not to be kind of consumed with self-loathing. So normally what I'll do after the gig, just sort of for my own reset, is I'll try to go back and I'll try to just play through all the stupid mistakes I made and get them right. So at least I'm like, my little atonement. And even if it's something that was easy, that wasn't a technical issue or anything like that, it's just kind of my way of sealing it up and having the last thing I did not be the mess up.
For me, it's, you know, I've been blessed in the sense that, like, I'm the youngest of four, and I've always been around older people, and you know, my brother Ethan Brosh is a professional guitar player, and for me it was super helpful just because I had somebody who did it before me, and anytime that I went through anything, I could go and ask, like, did you ever go through this? And like that feeling of knowing that I'm not alone in whatever I was experiencing is to this day like the biggest thing for me. So, you know, nowadays, you know, whether it's my family or just, I think anybody can achieve that by surrounding themselves with a community of like-minded people, which, as we know from the internet, is really easy to do now. You know, like Gretchen and I talk about this all the time. You know, it's like if you're embarrassed to say it to somebody else, you know, you might have a friend that you trust that you can talk about it with, and they're like, yeah, you know, I went through that too, you know. So for me, that's like the biggest helpful thing, you know, and that can be with anything, because we're all musicians. Chances are we've been through the same things, whether, again, another thing, whether we like to admit it, but you know, I think it's like that.
So I like to play it twice and call it jazz. Okay, go ahead, keep going. Hey, Alexandra, what about you?
I have a lot of failures all the time, especially live. And when I do one mistake, I tend to do like 1,000 more. And one interesting solution that I found to keep me distracted from this so focused mistake doing is to smile after the mistake. And suddenly it's like reprograms my brain to relax somehow, and like I reset everything and continue with the new mindset, and I don't do so many mistakes that I would do otherwise. I remember that I read this on Facebook. It was a post by a drummer, but I'm not sure which one was it. But yeah, it's definitely very, very useful advice, and it saves my ass many times.
Taking a deep breath after you screw up is helpful too. It floods your brain with oxygen and it calms you down so you're not as flustered. I do a lot of deep breathing.
Yeah.
Keep it going, keep it going.
Being able to laugh about it too is important. Like sometimes I'll look over at my bandmates and, you know, give them a look that they know means like supreme self-loathing, and then they laugh at me. And you're laughing and you're like, all right, on to the next thing.
That's like the smiling thing is such awesome advice, because like at the end of the day, I think people are there to watch a good performance, and they're not like fixated on all these like perfectionist things that you're probably hearing. So even if you mess up dreadfully, like if you laugh and you look like you're still having a good time, everyone we'll still have a good time. I mean, give or take a few people in the front row with their arms crossed, like judging. But, I mean,
that's just guitar community. You're always gonna have those. They show up to every gig.
Yeah, it's like like a secret club of judging.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think there's been a few times where it's like even, I mean, of course, I mess up all the time. There's a few times we played like absolutely like awful sound venues, and on stage the sound just is garbage, and there's nothing you can really do about that. We're at a level where we don't really have our own sound person yet, but there's, you know, sometimes just the monitors are switched, or there's like terrible feedback. The sound person's like eating a sandwich. So, like for those shows, I just look at my bandmates and we just all laugh it off. And we just look like we're having a good time and try to like put on a good show, even if it doesn't sound the best. Like I've learned to just surrender control sometimes. It's really hard, but.
I have another tool I've pulled out a few times, is where I'll pull out my middle finger and then point it at myself. So for a split second, the audience thinks they're being flipped off, but when you shoot it at yourself, then it's comedy.
That's awesome.
I incorporate self-deprecation into my stage banter for my acoustic stuff. That works too. It takes the pressure off because I'm just roasting myself.
You know, it reminds me too. I saw there's a live Eric Clapton DVD where he made a mistake, and when they were editing it down, they kept it in, and they just put this cartoon figure that said "Oops."
Yeah. Oh my God.
And it just humanizes you.
Yeah.
You know, if you never made a mistake, I mean, that I like to think that would get boring.
Yeah, like CDs now are so. You know, bands put out these CDs that are so overproduced. There's not a single mistake. Everything's edited on Pro Tools. And so it's, you know, it's where it just sounds like machines. And then obviously you get on stage and you're not going to sound like you did on the album. So I think it's refreshing for people to see humans. You know, I mess up all the time. Usually the most easiest stuff because I overthink. I'll sit there and overthink the easiest things, you know. And then, yeah, we'll just sit, we'll turn to each other. We laugh. I messed up a solo somewhere in Germany and it was like so bad. I was like, I just stopped and started laughing. Everybody else started laughing, and then I just picked it right back up. And, you know, you can't, you know, you learn. And then you go over the solo again, and then you play it right the next time. So.
Just basically, you know, let it roll off. I know that I do little videos on, and I do one take, you know, noodles over backing track. All right. And I'll look at the camera and like, yeah, okay, that was bad. Whatever. I'll still publish it. I don't care. So, you know.
Just think about this CDs. What a very, very good point. I think it's the reason that everything is overproduced. Somehow learns the audience to expect super perfect performance all the time. And for instance, if I listen to some music which is quite older, like 70s, you can hear that this music is way more live than the current music. And when you play it on a concert, you're closer to what's on the record. And this doesn't lead to some disappointment in the audience. And I'm also struggling with this in my album right now because I'm a pathological perfectionist, and I fight with myself to leave some things as they are and not overproduce them. And yeah, I think it was very good point that Nikki said about CDs.
Your new album's gonna rule, actually, Alexandra. I just did a track. So you got me on there, so there's gonna be some human elements. So
we should say that Alex is actually calling in from Bulgaria. That's why she's up so late.
Yeah.
So bless you for staying up with us.
It's a great honor for me to be here and to meet you all. And of course, I would do this in any hour, no matter which time it is.
So awesome.
So here's a question. From the Phil Smith. It says, Jennifer has definitely opened the road for more female players. But are all the others here feeling any kind of pressure of being a potential role model to some little girls beginning out there? So, you feel pressure to be a role model?
I feel pressure to be a good person regardless of whether I'm going to be someone's role model or not. I think it just all comes back to that. But you don't want to get me started about how much guilt I feel about that on a daily basis, so let's just pass it off to somebody else.
I think you just do what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really think about how you affect people. You just do what you do, and whatever feedback you get, it's either good or it's not, and you just keep moving on.
Excellent. Let me go through some of the. Chris Finley says all your latest are truly amazing. Let's see. CSIP Nicole. So yeah, CSIP, you should put your channel up here if you're put your link to the channel, and we'll tell everybody to go find you. So, any advice that you might have to ones who are, you know, I guess it really doesn't even mean to be female, but female guitarist or anybody starting out, the advice is good regardless of gender. So, what advice do you have for new ones?
The one thing that comes to mind is to keep an open mind about all genres of music. So I remember when I went to GIT, Guitar Institute, before it was Musicians Institute, but way back before people had shoes. That's how long ago that was. I remember I just turned into a jazz Nazi, and all of a sudden, you know, I started selling my rock records, and I thought jazz was the ultimate thing. And I remember expressing that to a upright bass player one night in a club, and he kind of stomped on me for thinking that way. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, I guess that's not a cool thought. So ever since then, I've kept my mind wide open to all kinds of music and have learned so much from listening to, like, one of my favorite things is ethnic music from different countries around the world. Because there's, especially with the internet, it's, you know, back in my day, it wasn't so easy to go get a cassette of a Turkish religious music, you know. And so I would collect it on the road. But now you have access to everything. So keeping your mind open, even if you are currently a metalhead, there's a hell of a lot that you can learn from every other genre. So keep your ears open.
This is great advice. I would tell the same thing, since I suffered from falling into this trap of idealizing certain genre and keeping away from anything else. Doesn't matter if it's jazz or metal or anything. At a certain point, it limits you very, very much, and it's really important to keep yourself open to all kinds of music.
I think there's another benefit to that too, because, you know, you might think that genres are like totally different from each other when you don't really know that much about them. And when you start digging in and learning about stuff, you can actually see the common threads between the genres, and that can teach you more about just music in general than you would have gotten anywhere else, because most people don't really take the time to look at it like that, you know, like realizing that it's all music and it always has a relationship to something else. And I think that's really valuable, especially when you're a guitar player and you can abuse it by playing too many notes. Can be a good lesson, you know. So
I totally agree. I think like a beautiful thing to keeping your mind open to different genres is the potential for genre hybridizations or crossovers. I feel like it's a great way to keep something growing, to do something new. Because if you only like listen to homogenous music, then you probably just replicate that, and then nothing new gets made. So it's like if you keep your mind open and you take influences from like reggae or like hip hop, R&B, classical music, anything can be like inspiration you can like recontextualize a concept from another genre and like put it in your own whatever genre you're playing, and it's like a really fun way to get inspired when you're feeling kind of meh.
Yeah, and sometimes it teaches you more about the genre that you already know, because you realize that something you didn't think came from that early on or from such a different genre, all of a sudden you see the relationship and you're like, okay, that's where it started, or here's another way that people used it, or, you know, whatever it is. And then you end up knowing that a little better.
And it's the more kinds of music that you can do, the better chance you have of making a living at playing it.
That's true.
Yeah.
I just had a flashback of before the internet. I was doing a clinic somewhere and people were asking questions afterwards, and this guy raised his hand and asked me why I took the Michael Jackson gig. Like, it wasn't cool enough in his world. And I thought, are you kidding me? Why did I take it?
Yeah, only the biggest gig on the planet. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, when people say stuff like that, it really opens your mind. Like, wow, there are some different perspectives out there, and I'm glad that's not mine.
Right.
Yeah.
And where is that guy right now? On the road? I doubt it.
Oh man.
And well, I just keep blabbing if there's any space. So sorry, got to get a crowbar.
Yeah.
For the youngsters, just making sure that you're in it for the music, as opposed to the fame. Because like I said before, that's very fleeting. You either get it or you don't. It could be here today, gone later today. But your love for music, there's nothing that can knock that off. Nothing that can wipe that out of your life. And that's going to be the most fulfilling thing anyway. Learning, growing, that's the whole reason we do it.
And to second that, one of the things that I often find myself telling people, just because it's surprisingly necessary, is making sure that you do whatever you need to do to keep your personal love of music alive. And if that means changing teachers, if that means quitting a band, if that means going in a direction that you wouldn't have thought you would have gone in, or maybe seems less cool to your social circle, like, do what you have to do to protect that, because it's a marathon. It's not a race, you know? And if at the end of the day you're playing music and you're loving playing music, that's what will fulfill you. Anything else is outside of your control. So keep that love and continue to make, you know, changes in your path so that you can stay passionately connected to what you're doing.
I think going back to what we were saying about success earlier and what it means to each of us, but for me, one thing I'm going through currently is I feel like what's really helped me is having a strong sense of like what I want to stand for and like what I would like to represent and how I want music to play a role in my life. I feel like when you start to get to a level where other people are on your team and stuff, and people want, like, you know, quote unquote, a piece of the pie, you get pulled in a million directions by other people who want to make a dime off of what you're doing, and they want a say in like your art. And I think as long as you're doing art for art's sake, to keep yourself happy, it's easier to like tune out voices trying to dilute your vision. I think that's like one thing that I'm dealing with currently, where it's like, man, sometimes I really have to compromise because I do want to make a living, and maybe it's like an opportunity that I wouldn't take immediately, but if it does help, you know, I'll do it. But at the same time, sometimes I experience like cognitive dissonance because it's like, man, I don't know if I want to even do this or if it even relates to like what I'm trying to go for. But yeah, this journey is full of compromises, and I'm still learning. So I'd say just like know what you want to stand for, and like have a strong sense of like who you are. I know it's like really vague.
That's good.
It sounds like.
I think that's really valid for your own music. And I think that's one of the hardest things there is to keep digging and digging and digging, and peeling the layers of the onion to figure out who you are. And that's going to keep changing all the time. And I found, God, in the last 5-6 years, I keep going to new levels. And that's the most satisfying thing there is to find your own voice. It's one thing to be on stage and doing whatever gigs, whether it's cover bands or whatever, but being able to connect with people with your own voice is it's a very worthy goal. Not to say that you can't do a million other gigs and just keep yourself open to, yeah, well, I got called last year to do a Pink Floyd tribute, you know, and I hadn't listened to that stuff since the 70s, and it's memorizing Gilmore solos hour after hour after hour after hour. It's like, you know, I'm glad I did it. Probably wouldn't do it again, but it's everything that you learn, you grow from some kind of way.
Well, just a little update. We have 50 viewers watching us right now. So that's good. Let me find my notes here. Okay, so the future. What do you guys have planned? What's the happening? What's going on?
That's hard with so many people. It's like, you go. No, you go.
I know.
I have future plans, and this is to release my album first, and then I will think what to do. But yeah, this is something tangible because it happens after a month.
It's funny, when you're younger, you can't wait to get on the road, and now I'm trying to find ways to not go on the road so much. Just constantly on a plane, getting zapped with radar at the metal detector. It's like, so it's real easy to get burnt out. You know, the last tour I was on, 6 weeks last fall, 3 separate times I landed and my luggage and my guitar did not. So I had to borrow a guitar. I've had to rent guitars, and that kind of stress. It's hard enough just being on tour and having new situations and new challenges every day. But when you run into that kind of stuff or missed flights, it's just the stress level just goes through the roof. And there's been many times I go, there's got to be another career out there for me. You know? And then all you have to do is look at the want ads and go, well, I could be a bartender, or I could just get on with it and pick up the guitar again. But it's it can beat you up over the years.
Yeah. I've got a lot of touring coming up the rest of the year. Like, we're booked a lot through January, and I absolutely love it. It takes a big physical, emotional drain on you, but in between that, when I'm at home, I'm planning on working on like just my solo music finally. And like you said, just nothing can compare to playing your own music. So just trying to get all that done.
I guess I have a release coming up summer too. It's exciting because it's the first time my band's gone to like a legit studio to record an album. We've always done like DIY recordings. So it's kind of like our debut release. So I'm excited for that. And then I have a bunch of touring coming up as well. It is taxing. I'm very young and new, and it's already taxing for me. So.
I have a couple new album things in the works, and I'm doing hopefully a benefit for Santa Rosa or Northern California fire victims, hopefully with Jennifer and Andy Timmons and Andy Summers and a bunch of other amazing people coming up next week, the 20th. And then just super busy, like just juggling, doing some writing for like Acoustic Guitar Magazine and some lesson stuff, and you know, just trying shows with Zepparella, and you know, trying to do everything all at once.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. So I got my next album in the works that I'm really hoping will be out by the end of the year. That's my goal, because it's been too long since I released new music, and I wanted to say 2018 on it. But but that's like in the middle of the million Cirque du Soleil shows that we do a week. And I just had a Jam Track Central series come out, so I'm hoping to do more stuff with them. And yeah, trying to stay sane between all those things.
We got another episode to film too, Nili.
Yes. June. Yes.
Rapping. Yeah. Oh, yes. Talking in a sense.
And cat bites.
Oh, Francis is in the next room. I kind of encouraged her to stay. It's like the cat that just bites everybody on camera. Like
maybe it's a good move for today. Yeah.
Cirque du Soleil is something that Nili and I have in common. I did a stint with the Zumanity show in Vegas for 6 months. That's a whole other kind of thing from touring. And I was thinking maybe that's where musicians go to die, they say, is Vegas, right? and I was thinking, well, when I got burnt out on the road, which has happened many, many times, I thought, well, maybe Vegas is it. Maybe that's where I'll end up and doing theater shows. And I'm just curious on your take on doing the show. 10 shows a week is brutal.
It's brutal. I mean, I think for me, it's a different situation just because there's no band, and that's a big thing for me. I mean, because, you know, you're playing with tracks every night. But, you know, on the other hand, the tracks never mess up, so you know it's going to be consistent. But, I mean, it's just honestly, like, I don't even really mind playing the same music every 2 shows a night because I really love Michael Jackson. But for me, it's just the physical aspect. Like, if I had to do these 10 shows that are already so athletic and then tour on top of that, that would just be nuts. So I think the saving grace for me with this job is actually living in one place, because, you know, if it was a pit situation, it would be easier. But the 10 shows, like trying to be an athlete and a musician, that's actually the struggle for me. So it's more like just the working out and the keeping myself happy than the music actually almost seems secondary in this gig. It seems like the easy part. So, because it's just so repetitive. But,
sure.
You know.
Nili, I just want to say your costumes look so dope.
Oh, thank you. Well, they would be doper if they didn't keep injuring me. But
wow, how long did they put on?
What's that?
How long did they take to put on, and also how are they injuring you?
Well, they don't take that long to put on, but the jacket that I have now, like, it's just, well, the guitars weigh like between 12 and 14 pounds, and then the jacket is like really heavy on top of that. So like the first few days before it was even really ready to go, and they were like, okay, this goes in the show tonight. And I put it on and I was like, all right, this isn't really comfortable, but the comfort is fine, you know, as long as it's like doable. And 3 shows into it, like I threw my back out, you know.
Oh,
so
God.
This kind of stuff, it's just like, it's so normal to them, you know. And again, like, that's the part that's super new, is like, you're treated like you're on a sports team, not a gig, you know. So for me, it's like, it's the same thing. So that's been the learning curve. And, you know, you just deal with it like any other injury. So like, I mean, right now I'm out of the show for the exact same reason. I was supposed to be at work right now. But this is good because now I can keep talking for as long as I want without worrying about doing makeup. So, but yeah, it's definitely a really different world than everything I've done before.
Well, that brings up a whole thing of sticking up for yourself. And I think, I know there's been situations on gigs that I've been on where guys try to control me. And that one I'm thinking was, it was a Les Paul tribute at the Rock Hall of Fame. I don't know, 5, 7, 10, I don't know how many years ago. And there was a lot of guitar players there. And the guy, one of the guys that was a stage manager, roadie, was trying to tell me I couldn't have my pedals there because there was just too many guitar players. And I kind of naturally just backed off, like, oh, that's the rules here. And thank God my first tech from the Jackson tour was there as well. And he stood up for me and said, hell no, your pedals are right here. You know, and I that was a lesson for me, that you can stand up for yourself. This is your shit. This is your sound. Don't let anybody tell you you can't use it. In fact, that brings up another, I hope it doesn't turn into a bitch fest because I'm a motor mouth. I remember I was in the studio with Jeff Beck, and I hadn't played a single note, and they rolled in my rack because at that time I was doing guitar synthesizer, and there was like 3 rack spaces just for synth stuff, and my guitar stuff was in it too. So it was a giant refrigerator sized thing. And the engineer, before I even played a note, goes, oh, we usually get better sound with just a Marshall and a cab. You know, I mean, immediately he was trying to control the situation and put me down and elevate himself as being in control. And I thought, you bastard. And I know you've probably all run into things like that.
I had a sound guy tell me to turn down before I had played a single note. and I said to him, I was like, do you want to hear my volume first? And he said, well, based on past experience, you know, I'm sure you could turn down. And I said, okay, well, based on past experience, I'm at the volume that I play 98% of all gigs. Would you like to try that volume first? And then he was like, oh, yeah, okay, fine. And so we ran a song. And then I was like, how's my volume? And he's like, it was perfect, like you said it was going to be.
Don't you love that moment though, when like there's always going to be the person that has like some sort of preconceived notion about female guitar player, and you can like see the moment where their face, like their attitude shifts, and you get that like they're like, all right, you're okay. And it's just like, I kind of love changing people's minds, because at least it means that there are still guys who are open-minded enough to have their minds changed about this, you know. And it's just like one person at a time, and it's all of us doing this together. You know, I think that's the true fight here. So I kind of like hearing stories like that, because you can see that the person had to compete.
Yvette had a really good one the other day.
Oh yeah, just the other day. First of all, every time I roll into a show, people always talk to my bass player and then ask me if I'm the singer of the band, which is really funny because we're instrumental.
Same here.
It's funny. Like, they'll talk to my bass player about my guitar stuff, and he's like, I don't know, go talk to the guitarist. But the other day I went to a music store, and they had these little orange like 3-watt amps, and I was just tickled by that because they're so small and cute, and I was like, oh, maybe I can use it to like practice in the van because it's battery operated. So I asked if I could try one out, and then he was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, do these have batteries in them already, or do I need to go get one, or do you need a 9-volt power supply? And he's like, oh no, there's a battery inside, you should be fine. I'm like, cool, can I have a cable? And he hands me the cable. And then I turn around and he's like, oh, just letting you know, so like the amp won't work on its own, so you got to plug it in. And I was like, wait, I thought you said there's a battery in here. Do you mean I need to get a 9-volt power supply? And he's like, oh, no. It's just a lot of people will play these things and no sound will come out. So you have to plug in the cable and plug your instrument into the amp, and that's how you'll get sound to come out. And I was like sitting there, like he was explaining this for like 10 minutes to me, and I was just bewildered because I couldn't comprehend that someone was telling me that I had to plug in my instrument to make the amp work. So I was like, what are you talking about? And finally, the moment where I registered what he was telling me, I was like, yeah, of course. And I just walked away with like the weirdest look on my face. I was like, did someone just like explain to me like, how to use an amp?
In order to stay alive, you have to inhale first.
Yeah.
And you have to continue.
Make sure to touch the strings, because if you don't touch the strings, the sound won't come out. Like, when does it end?
Don't forget your volume knob. That's a very important one.
Right.
God, like my biggest pet peeve are sound guys coming up and messing with my gear, like starting to go and change my tone. So this was a recent one that happened to me. So I bring my Kemper, and we have backline if we're traveling, you know. So I just put my Kemper on top of whatever head is there already. And so I'm playing, and I'm, you know, playing for the sound guy at the front of the house to dial it in. And then I hear him telling a guy to go do something, to change something in my tone, not asking me to do it personally, but telling a guy to go mess with my stuff. So I'm like, all right. I watch him, and he goes behind me, and he starts messing with whatever amp is below my Kemper. And I'm letting him mess with it like, yeah, you're really changing it. You're really changing it. And I just let him do it. Let him look like an ass, you know? And then I'm like, you know, I'm not playing through that, right? Look, like, that on top that's lit up that I'm playing through, leave it alone. And he walked off. It's like, don't touch my stuff. You know, they always act like, oh, girl, you're the singer, or you don't know what you're doing. I've had so many people be like, do you want me to do the knobs and do it for you?
Oh my God.
No.
The best is when they explain to you how to use your gear, and then they try to hit on you later.
Yeah.
Like, they invite you out to dinner. That's just so unprofessional and weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to patronize you and then take you out.
Yeah.
Right? Then you'll like me.
Yeah.
I just can't believe the sense of entitlement of anybody who works at a venue that think they can like touch an artist's gear.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
it doesn't matter what the gender is. Like, if you work at a certain place, if somebody comes in with their own personal stuff and you start messing with it, like, I don't know. I don't get it.
Dude, I had one guy take to social media to tell everybody what a terrible person I was, because he started to move my amp. And first of all, which we all know is don't do that. and I look over and I see this guy ripping my amp off the cabinet and it's still attached. And I went, whoa,
Oh.
like, you know, not whoa, you terrible human being and I hate you and your family. Whoa, like you're about to screw my stuff up. And he was so, and I was like, it's plugged in, like, let me take care of it or whatever. And evidently that caused him such distress that he had to take to social media to tell everybody how terrible I was. I was like, really? God, what a life you lead. Like, you're so delicate.
Wow.
Don't touch other people's gear without asking.
Yeah.
I think that's the lesson here. Don't touch my stuff.
Yeah, exactly. The big takeaway from this.
Yeah.
They'll always move the mic too. I can't stand the mic going straight in like a bullseye to the, you know, the gnarliest part of the speaker. I like to get the paper on the cone a little bit, and so I'll move it. And so many times I turn around and they moved it back. That's the same as messing with your amp. Just leave it alone.
Just sigh, collective sigh.
I know.
Yeah, we've all been, we could all write a book about that kind of stuff. You know, having said that, I know a lot of sound guys in clubs, probably all of them have dealt with bands that are so arrogant and talk down to them that they have a chip on their shoulder. So when you come in, you get the brunt of their last 2 years.
It goes back to the whole idea of an open mind, like that you mentioned about genres of music. It's like keeping that open mind with everything. Try not to bring your baggage into stuff. You know, if you're a musician, don't be arrogant to the sound guy. If you're a sound guy, don't assume the musicians don't know what they're doing. You know, keeping that open mind.
Indeed. More questions, Chad. You went away.
I know. I mean, I've been enjoying it. So
Also, don't put your drinks on the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. So here's one. It kind of goes along with this. How do you handle outrageous, up close fans who are maybe part
Drunk.
part sloth? Yeah. How do you handle that when you're in a performance and they want to be
Like this.
number one fan?
What's that say?
What?
What does it say?
Think before you act.
Nice.
Should you give them the elbow? That girl's prepared. You know, that instantly brings a memory up from, oh God, many years ago. I was in a club in Arizona in the summer. It was like 124 degrees. It was just hellacious heat. And I remember I was playing a solo, and all of a sudden I see beer fly into my pedal board.
Oh, jeez.
And I just instantly, I didn't even think, I just looked up and flipped the guy off. Well, turns out, yeah, he was a little drunk, but he felt so bad for doing that. I ruined his night. I mean, he ruined my board, of course, but you never know what's behind the energy of somebody. I mean, you know, when people are drunk, how many times can you hear, you're great, you're great, you're great, before you go, okay, you really need to go to the back of the room, because you're kind of done with that. They can be super obnoxious.
I've often thought I'd like to have like a guitar player head cam so that I could record these conversations that nobody would ever believe, like that you have after a show. I'm pretty cool. I mean, like, somebody has to be really obnoxious before I'll kind of brush them off. And I stay until everybody gets, you know, their stuff signed and gets a minute or something like that. But I remember having one conversation where the guy, you know, it's like you can see people are waiting patiently and you're trying to, you know, manage all of that. And the guy started telling me about what a hard time he was going through because his cousin's truck was having transmission problems. And I was like, oh my God, how are we talking about this right now?
I have a video to show you later that relates to that. It's like a funny thing.
Okay.
But I have a funny story about this, but it starts out not so funny. It starts out with like a bunch of, basically on tour, sometimes I go out and I'll like talk to fans and stuff, and I'll like, you know, answer questions, and I'll meet them at like the merch table. Sometimes fans get a little handsy. I had like a couple of times on the last few tours, people would like freak out and then they'd like pat me down and like touch me, and it's just like really violating because it's like they don't see you as a person, and they're like freaked out that like you exist and you're not just like an internet entity. I don't know, like
Three dimensions.
Three
Wow.
dimensions. I'm not created by like Japanese scientists or whatever. Like, yeah. So so like I've been like pat down and stuff, and it's always like made me like freak out and cry because I have a thing with personal space and feeling trapped. I hate that. So after having that happen a few times on tour, so we play this show in Tampa, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, "Can you sign this poster?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, "Can you make it out to my friend?" I'm like, "What's your friend's name?" He's like, "It's Kevin." So I'm like, "Hey, Kevin." He's like, "Oh yeah, so Kevin was gonna come to the show tonight, but he actually died in a car accident 2 days ago. So he was supposed to come here, but instead I'm just gonna get this poster, and can you write something nice so we can put it in his grave when we bury him?" And it was like really neat. So I was writing this note to Kevin. I was like, "Oh, I hope there's dope music in heaven," like blah blah blah, like stuff like that. And then I started crying because he started crying. So then we started like holding each other crying because I was just so touched by his reaction and also the whole situation. And so then he leaves, and then my bandmates come back and they see me just in tears sobbing, and they're like, "What's up?" And then I'm like, "He touched me." Like, but
Oh, no.
it's like the worst wording I could have used because I meant like he touched my heart and that's why I'm crying. But they took it like he like put his
Molested
hands
you.
on me and touched me. So they're like, "Where is he? We're gonna like take his hand." But then I went outside and I explained the situation. But it was just so funny because I couldn't have chose a worse phrase to use.
Somebody accidentally got there.
Yeah, I'm glad nobody got beat up.
Sometimes you just have to push people away,
Yeah.
especially if they get touchy and they've been drinking. They have no boundaries, and I've gotten super. I mean, it takes a lot for me too to get rude with people, but there has to be a boundary where you just crossed it, and you need to move.
Yeah, it becomes about your safety after a while, you know?
Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, we do meet and greets after every show. And with Iron Maiden music, it's usually a pretty rowdy, drunk crowd, especially depending where you are in the world. And I'm quiet. I don't, I'm a huggy person if I know you and everything. But when people start, you're talking to somebody and then you have a person here grabbing your arm, on this other side tapping you, somebody pulling your hair to get your attention. Oh man, it takes so much patience. There's only been a couple of times where I've had to be like, like a guy spilled his beer on us recently. Like we were, just really drunk, just all over our purses. It's like, oh man. But yeah, usually I usually have a glass of wine after that. I'm like, all right, time to wind down a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, oof.
Well, guys, we went past the hour. It was so entertaining. If you or you think it's time to call it a night, what are you up for?
Well, I'm about to go do some more birthday celebrations, so I gotta unfortunately get out of here. Yeah.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Nikki.
birthday.
Happy
It's like
birthday,
8
Nikki.
years, so thank you. But I'm glad I got to spend it talking to you guys.
Yeah, I'm happy I got to meet all of you.
Yeah.
I know. It's gonna be.
Thank you all for being here, and just send me your addresses.
That is so cool. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
The Helix Fairy.
Yeah.
And
Who knew he'd be showing up?
I will let you. I'll send you the email address to give a personal thank you to the COO. So.
All right.
That sounds like a good idea, yeah.
We'll have to do this again with the ovarian vortex.
It's like the G3, but
Oh my god, that's awesome.
Thanks, Chad, for getting it together.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody who watched. Again, links are in the description. Subscribe to these fine ladies, and if you liked this video, give me a subscribe. and a like. And let's see, we got to 26 likes. 46 people are still watching. So
Sweet.
we kept their you guys kept their them entertained. And thank you everybody. And Eric Broadbent from EVH Gear TV
Eric
was on, and he enjoyed it. Great show. Wonderful. So I can't express as much gratitude as I have for you guys being here. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk some more. But thank you. I'm going to end the broadcast. You guys stay for a second. I'm going to end the broadcast. We'll finish up. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Okay.